So today we're going to look at a bit of a historical question that I used to be very interested in back when I was in graduate school and a little bit before that, before I went into my PhD program. And it's the question of how Jesus' burial happened. It's actually a very interesting question to research if you haven't gone into it before. But I'm going to talk about two particular articles that were written around the turn of the 2000s, one in 1999 and the other in 2004. And this would be the different views that were proposed by Byron McCane and William Lane Craig. So I don't know if you're familiar with these two guys, but Dr. Craig is a famous apologist for evangelical Christianity, and he has a couple of doctorates in philosophy and theology. I don't know him, but I know people who know him, and I've heard that he's a very nice man. And then over here we have Byron McCane. So Dr. McCane was actually my advisor in my master's degree program, and so he was the one who oversaw my MA thesis when I was writing, so I know his work pretty well. And it was interesting to me to find out that they had actually had opposing views back around this time period, so I thought I would tell you a little bit about their disagreement back in the day. So here's the introduction. How was Jesus buried? Right. So historians have discussed the burial of Jesus for a long time. So what can we know about it? How did it happen? What kind of a burial was it? So in this video we'll discuss the two views about the sort of burial that Jesus had, and you can see this is a picture from the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre, which is supposed to be the place that Jesus was actually buried. So the first view is that of Byron McCane, and he believes that the burial would have been considered a dishonorable burial by the Jews at the time. And the second view is William Lane Craig's view, who tends to think that the burial was honorable. He thinks that it's not more probable that a dishonorable burial did actually happen. So what story are we talking about? All four of the canonical Gospels have the story of Jesus' burial in them, but I'm going to pick out Mark's and try to use that as an example. So here's how Mark's account goes. So when evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate wondered if he were already dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When he learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph brought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. He then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph saw where the body was laid. This is just the NRSV translation. It's kind of the standard translation that's used by most people today, and especially in scholarly circles. So anyway, that's the story, and there are three others that change the account a little bit in Matthew, Luke, and John. So what's McCane's view? So Dr. McCane's article in 1999 claimed that Jesus' burial would have been considered dishonorable by the standards of the Jews at the time. So even though the four Gospels clearly attempt to beautify the burial scene, they still preserve two details that are associated with shameful burials. Okay, so before I go on to that, what does it mean that the Gospels had beautified the scene? Well, you saw that the Markan version was pretty plain. It was pretty bland. It just says that Joseph of Arimathea, who was a good and decent fellow, asked for the body of Jesus, and he puts it in a rock-hewn tomb, and that's about all there is to it. But in Matthew and Luke and John, things get a little bit nicer. So in John, for example, you have a garden tomb, and no one had been laid in it, right? In Luke's version, the tomb belongs to Joseph. It's Joseph's own family tomb, and no one had been laid in it. No one had been placed in it before. So you can see that the scene is being beautified. And even John describes the fact that Joseph of Arimathea dumps 75 pounds of spices onto Jesus' body, which is clearly an exaggerated amount. I mean, people didn't really do that in real life. but these are just attempts to beautify the scene. So even though these things are going on, McCane says you can see two details that are associated with shameful burials in ancient Jewish culture. One is that there were no mourners at the tomb during the burial. When the burial happens, there are supposed to be mourners if it's an honorable burial. And then the second reason is that the tomb was not Jesus' family tomb. An honorable burial would have somebody placed in the family tomb, but a dishonorable burial would involve the person being separated from his family as a mark of shame. So because of this, McCane believes that the burial would have looked like a dishonorable burial at the time. So McCane's not the only one to have made this argument. His view is similar to that of Brown and Ludemann, but the above points are his contributions. Those two aspects are what he really hinges his argument on. So let's go to Craig's view. So Dr. Craig, as an expert on the crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, crafted a response in 1924. Sorry, did I say 1924? 2004. And he responded to McCane's claim. So he said that a dishonorable burial was not on balance more probable than an honorable burial, and that there are several reasons for this. So his first one was that a burial could still be considered honorable even without mourners and without a family tomb, because there are many times in which people would die under honorable circumstances, but they were not able to be moved to a the family tomb, or there was no time to have mourners or professional mourners or anything like that. And additionally, he criticizes McCane's evidence because the examples that McCane gives for other dishonorable burials in ancient Jewish history come from after the time of Jesus. For example, the Mishnah is a Jewish text that McCane quotes that shows that the Sanhedrin, which is the same council that had Jesus executed, had a couple of burial places for the criminals who would get stoned to death, or that sort of thing. And McCane says this is the sort of thing that Jesus would have been put into when he was executed. They would not have put him in a family tomb. They would have put him in a place like this. But Craig believes that it may or may not necessarily be good evidence because it comes from after the time of Jesus. So who is right? Well, this is a difficult question because sometimes the facts are scarce and there are multiple views and multiple interpretations of the archaeological sites. But often when studying history, one side is not always clearly right. Sometimes the solution is somewhat in the middle. But I do tend to think, in my personal opinion, that Jesus' burial would have been considered more dishonorable than honorable by the Jewish standards of the time. If it is true that Jesus was executed both for treason and for violation of the Jewish law, then in the eyes of both the Romans and the Jews, he would have been considered a criminal. And so this would have gone to match with the fact that there were no mourners and no family tombs present for Jesus to be put into. This would have combined with the reason for his execution to give an appearance of a dishonorable burial. And additionally, if the Gospels are correct that the tomb was close to the site of crucifixion, then it makes sense that this tomb would have been one of the burial sites that was set aside for the executed criminals that are mentioned in the Mishnah. So obviously I didn't go into all of the possible details, but these are some of the major points, and I leave you to explore it for yourself, and my sources are listed here, both Craig's source and McCane's source. Until next time, I hope that you have a very great day.